Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and I am here to talk to you about this game. It is called Iron League Black Stadium. Iron League Black Stadium is a miniatures sports game, I guess is the best way to describe it. That it is about this dystopian future. I love dystopian futures. This dystopian future where basically the world was ravaged by war. And they called an end to the fighting so they could concentrate on rebuilding their countries. But still these factions, if you will, still had these lingering hate, anger, or what have you towards each other, and so they created this giant robot league, basically, where these different factions could then fight and attack each other and have at it, and you know, it contained the gruesome, bloody fighting to an arena of sport, or you know, which of course is, you know, a kind of a bloody way to handle things, but better than the entire world fighting each other, right? Anyway, so the whole, I like miniatures games. I enjoy them a great deal, and I really enjoy the idea of like sports combat, if you will. I mean, like Blood Bowl, it was like the first big thing. There's been other games like Chaos Ball and Red Ball and things like that. This was one that actually kind of is a cool marriage between the idea of, you know, mechs, these giant robots that people like sit in and drive. And I'm a big fan of like the old BattleTech game and MechWarrior and things like that. But this is, you have these giant miniatures in comparison, like here is like a person compared to the miniatures. So like you have these giant minis, but the cool thing is that the equipment and the different things you have for them is interchangeable. So you can take off this weapon and put a different weapon on there. You can have, and so you have the ability to kind of like outfit your mechanized troops the way you want to, and they actually then look the part, if you will. Now these minis, if there just happened to be a recent update actually to the Kickstarter where they are actually offering some higher detailed, more like you know, these miniatures, in my opinion. First of all, this is a prototype, so you know, this is not representative of how the game is going to look. But I think these are awesome. My kids think they're awesome. My son in particular. And I see no problem with this. But apparently there were some people that wanted like even a more distinct miniatures, if you will. And so there is a higher detailed option now through the Kickstarter to make so the mechs will even look more detailed and be even better than they already are, which is pretty cool. But anyway, regardless, let me show you, give you an overview of how the game is played, and then we'll come back here and I'll tell you more about why I've enjoyed playing Iron League Black Stadium. Alright, I've gone ahead and set up a two-player game of Iron League. Now, there are several different ways that you can play this game. You can play actually like tournament style, you can play a cooperative variant. There are like a match where you're actually playing with trying to like, you'll get these, you get a plasma ball, which would be this little figure here, this little plasma ball that you'll carry, and then you'll have actual like goals that you'll place onto the board that'll look like this, and you'll have to like dunk the ball, kind of like, you know, Rollerball, if you remember that old movie from, I'm not talking about that remake that was made with Rebecca Romaine Stamos or whatever, and that was awful, but like the old James Caan movie. So that's what it kind of reminded me. I don't know if that was an inspiration or not, but that's what I kind of felt a little bit about. But anyway, regardless, you can just have giant death matches where each person is trying to just basically destroy everybody else that's on the other team. And so there's all different kinds of ways to play the game. And that's something I'll touch on in my conclusion, is one of the things I really like about it. But, you know, I've just gone ahead and just set this board up kind of in a death match type of scenario, all like two full teams ready to go, ready to beat the tar out of each other. Normally what happens is that each side at the beginning, you use a certain number of allocation points that allow you to place certain people onto the board, whether they are robots or they are your units, if you will. You spend your allocation points depending upon the power of the unit. If it's a robot, it has a lot to do with not only the robot, but the equipment that the robot has on it and so forth. And I should mention that just really quickly. So like here is one of these giant Iron League robots. And these parts here, like this whole robot, you construct yourself. So like you can take that arm off, like if you didn't want to have this big giant heavy machine gun for this one, and like you wanted to create a robot. Well, actually, let's do this. So like, let's say you had a robot with like a giant heavy machine gun, and then for his other arm, you wanted to give him, say, of course, let me just take that arm off. Ah, he removed his arm. You wanted to put this smaller, like a beam weapon gun on his other arm, like so you could like kind of create this robot that has, you know, different options as far as weapons. So like that's one of the cool things. Obviously my son has absolutely adored these robots. He's been playing with them constantly. I actually had to remove them from his room so I could actually make this video. He was not very happy with me, but anyway, so you set these up, and you have these different powers, and like the different robots, the different weapons. Oh, I should show you this. This is kind of cool. This is like a giant sword, but it's like actually, like if you can see that, it is a giant beam that it's going to use to beat people up with. And actually, here, let me show. I actually made my son. This is my son's favorite configuration. He likes the robot that has like this big giant, basically steel door for a shield and the beam. So he kind of looks like a knight, is what he says. It's kind of tough to see with the darker version. And mind you, there are 4 of these teams. The reason why I don't have a big 4-on-4, all you can destroy each other all night long type of thing is just the space on my table kind of thing. But if you look, like right there, you will see that there is actually like a little figure in the figure of like a person, and that is the pilot of the ship. And that's important because pilots are vulnerable. You notice they don't have armor around them, and the other players, you can target pilots. You can actually, when robots get close to each other, you can try to like rip the pilot out of the other person's spot, and so then the robot then becomes has no pilot, and it stops moving, obviously. And then you, as another player, you can move one of your characters, one of your, these guys are called claws, or you could move other characters onto the robot, then could pilot that robot. So you could actually turn the tide a little bit by stealing somebody's robot from them. But let me talk about that all in just a little bit. This is not meant to be a really exhaustive rules overview. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how the game is played, because I do invite you to go ahead and read the rule book for Iron League so you can have a larger idea of what's going on. But I just wanted to touch on some of the basic ideas and premises of the game. So each team will get different pilots, and now the pilots all have like special abilities, and these are icons, and there's a wonderful list of icons within the rule book that you can read. But so like certain things like like a little dice here tells you that you can re-roll dice. This is like a representative of a square on the board, so like extra movement. Pilots will have special powers that you can use once per game, and then you just flip the card over to show that you've used that particular power. Non-pilots that take over, possibly, these robots and control them, if a non-pilot takes over, what happens then is that you don't get that special power. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now each robot will have its own little sheet here, and your pilot just kind of goes onto that spot to show that they're controlling that particular area. And then of course there are the hit points of the pilot. Now you might notice that here are the damage tokens, and if you see here, there's these 2 spots here, and then you see there's a shield there. So if you equip one of your robots with a shield, you get the extra 2 hit points for that particular robot. And then there's these things over here to show that if your robot is on fire, or you've taken wet engine damage or critical engine damage, because that can happen because of damage that you take as you play the game. All right. Also, the board, when you put it together, the players will take turns kind of creating the board. If you will, you notice that there's these cool little buildings. If you have a character that is in a spot that has I shouldn't say buildings, a wall that has a wall protecting it, they get bonuses to their defense dice, so they can't be harmed as much. You'll also notice that there are these barrels. Barrels are cool. Those are barrels of gasoline. Yeah, this remember this may seem a little weird because of the fact that this is like kind of a futuristic world type of thing. Like, why would you have barrels of gasoline in your combat zone? But this is a futuristic sport, remember, and so part of the fun of the sport is that they put these barrels of gasoline into the board. Now these barrels, when robots enter the spots with them, they are able to pick them up and then heave them at like other parts of the board, other players, other robots, things like that they can possibly do to try to destroy them. They can also, players can shoot the barrels to cause them to explode. Now, if those explode, and other things can cause fires as well, but if those explode, you place a fire token in there, and then if anybody happens to be in that spot, they will, take damage, obviously, because that spot is on fire and they're in that location. And you can, fires can go out on their own. Or like you have different actions and things that can happen. Now I've mentioned the robots quite a bit and like all the different powers and abilities and things they have, but the players, I mentioned these claws. Claws are cool. The way the claws work is if they can get onto a spot with a robot like so, the claws will move with the robot. They're thought to be like attached to it, like because they have these giant claws, right? And so they're attached to it. And so if the robot moves, the player will move with it. And then on the player's turn, the claws can attack the robot, and these can really do damage quickly. They also have the ability to attack the pilot directly as well, which is obviously bad. You don't want your pilots to get hurt. And then you have these kind of heavy infantry guys. These are called Zimmers. They have like these little energy weapons. And so these guys, you can do a lot of damage very quickly, and you want to protect those as much as possible. Now, the last units that you have are these mechanics, and they have the most. They're the most mobile. You notice they have little jet boots there. Now they get to fly around and they are mostly used to try to heal your robots as they take damage to keep them working. Now the one thing about this guy, unfortunately, this is a prototype I was sent. This guy lost his arm. Oh, poor guy. But anyway, he's still able to be a medic in my world. But the medics have this distinction that, and pilots as well, defenseless pilots and mechanics, you are not supposed to target those particular players. They are considered to be, protected, if you will. And if you do target them and attack them, you run the risk of actually having, and I don't have a miniature for this, I apologize, I just have this prototype, but this is the referee. And the referee robot has its own set of stats and things that can do. And you can also, because there is shenanigans, you are able, as you play the game, you will earn scrap tokens for doing well. These are these tokens over here. Scrap tokens can be used to bribe the referee to get in play. You can get action cards that'll bring the referee into play. Or if you commit a rules violation, like attacking a mechanic or what have you, you can cause the referee to come into play. And when the referee comes into play, it will seek to take care of, either like if you bribed him or a card has been played to have him come out, then he works for the person that's bribed them. But if if somebody broke the rules, it'll obviously go after the person that broke the rules. All right, so each type of unit has its own stats. Claws, they have how fast they can move, their the allocation points needed, damage with attacks and things like that. Here's your pilot, your Zimmen, which is as I said, the kind of the your heavy infantry guy, and your mechanics. And notice how mechanics have a 5 move. As I said, they have the ability to get around pretty quickly. So each of those pretty much are the exact same. The pilots have the different powers that each one has, but for the most part, everything's the same. The modifications to the robots to give them the different weapons and abilities are the big changes, if you will. All right, so the game is played pretty simply. You have an initiative, and then once you determine who gets to go first, then each player will just they first they activate. You're going to use the different units first. They're separate from each other. So after you determine initiative, and then you have a team that goes first. They're smaller troops, which are considered to be called fighters. Their fighters will go, and then the opposing team fighters will go, and then this team's robots will go, and that team's robots will go. You'll have a certain number of actions that you can take, and also you do get action cards. You get one of these for free at the beginning of each turn. You can also spend your scrap tokens to purchase more of these cards as well. The most of these cards that you can have at any given time are 3 cards. So if you get another card when you already have 3, you'll have to discard one to do so. Now the cards themselves, they have certain, like all of them are like icons. Like here's like the ref, like this card will allow you to summon the referee. This card will allow you, let me show you like extra movement, if you will. So the cards are very situational. You'll just expend them as needed. You might need them to like say give you more defense in certain situations. You might use them to give you to negate certain cards. You might use them to allow you to re-roll certain dice, things like that. And the cards are pretty important, actually. Sometimes you'll end up with cards that, like, they would, if you're on fire, like your robot's on fire, it'll allow you to extinguish it, and you won't get a chance to use it, but it is a good thing to hold on to and have as you play the game to make sure, just in case you're in another situation. Trust me, with all the barrels being thrown around and smashing and what have you, you are going to be on fire at some point. And also there's special abilities that people have, and also different attacks that it can cause you to get started on fire as well. So it's very important. Attacks and defense are very straightforward. You have you roll your attack dice. Certain results will cause certain things to happen. Mostly what you're looking for is you're looking for these little impacts like this. Those are your hits. If you get more hits, then the person rolls defenses, and you can see that little shield icon there. If you get more hits than they have defense, then you will do damage to that particular unit. Now, usually if it's one of these small guys, usually one attack one damage is going to be enough to take them out, and you're going to be good to go. Obviously, the robots are big, and they have armor, and they're tough, and they have more hit points, and so you're going to have to do successive damage. Now, when you do damage, what you end up doing is you roll. I apologize, you don't roll. You're going to draw damage cards like so. Now, damage cards are going to have certain effects on them. So, like, here's like 1 point of damage, and your mech is on fire, or robot, or whatever you want to call it, is on fire. Here is, and then there are some that it's just a damage. That's all it is. Now, these are drawn like as each damage you take. Now, if you take 2 points of damage, you will draw from this particular deck, and now you have bigger things, like here's 2 points of damage and you lose one of your weapons. So things like that can be very devastating. Here's 2 points of damage and you take some engine damage, so you're not going to be able to move as fast and things like that. So that is why, because of the varied effects that are going to happen because of the damage, that is why you desperately need your mechanic running around and building up your robots as they take damage. Now, remember, if you're not playing like a deathmatch type of situation where you aren't allowed to bring more reinforcements, if you're playing in like a game where you're trying to score goals, you are able to, if your mechanic gets killed, you're able to bring another one out. You have like your team, but obviously having your mechanic out and being able to be moving around and doing their thing is a lot better than you don't want to have to re-spend the points or whatever to bring more of them out to do so. So depending upon the type of game you're going to play, you're going to have just basically a certain ending point. A lot of times in the match games, what it is that you're going to play to a certain point total, and the point total is normally it's 26. And so you have this scorecard here, and you can see it goes all the way up to the 26 over here. You get 10 points for a goal, but you can also score other points for like destroying other mechs or killing off the other players as well. So you can score points otherwise, but obviously getting that plasma ball into the your opponent's goal is a way to get a ton of points. Now, I don't have two of the boards set up, but you might have noticed that there's these little green lights here. That isn't just design; those are considered to be doors. If you have the other board set up, you actually have these tokens that show that the doors are closed, and so you have to actually get those doors to open to go from one side of the board to the other, adding kind of another wrinkle and different things that are going on. Finally, one last thing I should mention, that these black dice are just another set of dice that are exactly like these. So like one person can roll their defense dice at the same time as somebody else is rolling their attack dice. So, you don't have to like roll then somebody else go. Now these dice are actually used specifically for when you're targeting pilots. And you can see there's actually like a little pilot icon there. So if you have a situation where somebody is trying to take out the pilot of one of your Iron League mechs, you're going to be using these red dice instead. Just another thing that there are like as far as, because you need those for like the separate dice results as far as with the different possibilities, the variabilities or whatever, as far as those dice are concerned. But other than that, I mean, ultimately, that is the game. Depending upon the scenario, you're just going to play until the end of that. If it's the cooperative one, you have to survive a certain amount of time and to defeat the non-player character forces that you have to fight. If deathmatch, last person standing. If it's like a match, then you're going to play those point rolls and things like that. I have found that I think 2-player, for me, this game was probably the most fun. I mean, just basically because when I did play like an all-out slugfest, it was very difficult to kind of, for me, to like be able to defend myself, as well as, trying to like pick on somebody and trying to take them out. But there is something wonderful about the chaotic level of everything that is going on with the different players, and obviously this game is extremely customizable from like all the different places, things that you're going to be putting on the board, the different setups that you can use for your mechanized units, and just also like the game beyond the game, as far as having like you can even you could have obviously very easily have 2 teams against each other instead of an all against all. And then we did that actually, and that was a lot of fun, playing a match, like doing the actual match with the goals and whatever, having 2 teams against each other, and we had a great deal of fun with that. But let me talk about all of that and a lot more in my conclusion. Alright, thank you very much for sitting through that rules overview. Like I said, I did not go through each and every little bit about the game as far as like, the different ranges and like how you, add, bonus dice to this and bonus hits to that and what have you, and all the different like modifiers. It is a very in-depth game. Like all the different modifiers and all the different combat mechanisms that are at play make a lot of sense, and if I'd done that, the already fairly long overview would have been even longer, and I wanted to be a little more succinct. Like I said, I do invite you to go ahead and check out the rules for the game, which you can find over on the Kickstarter page, so you can read those and you can have a better in-depth look at that part of the whole presentation, if you will. Now, the game itself, as I said, is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the one team versus each other, mostly because there are some really wonderful strategies and tactics that are going on as you play the game, because of the fact that you have, you have your small people and the large robots, if you will. And a lot of people, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, there's... What's the point of even having the little dudes out there? Because obviously they're pretty fragile in comparison to the robots. But here's the deal. The thing is that they don't cost a lot of your allocation points to put out. And that description that I showed you with all the huge teams ready to go, that's normally never really going to happen. I just did that for presentation purposes and so you can see everything. Because of the limited number of allocation points that you have at the beginning of your scenario, you're not going to have a full 3 team of your robots. Your robots, obviously, it's like this giant target. It's like, hey, look, I am this big robot with a giant ray gun and a shield. You are going to want to take that out. And the thing is that especially with these little claw dudes, you know, they're very good at being able to grasp those and be able to take them down. And it can be it can be one of those situations where you know, because there's rules for, like, you know, having things be knocked down and having to get back up and all these different things that happen. You know, you are even hesitant in a way, you know, to send out a big robot, because for the same amount of allocation points for that robot, you could be putting out, you know, like several of the little dudes instead, and you know, and depending upon the scenario, maybe that's what you need at that given moment. Now, obviously, you know, having a big robot with a shield and a machine gun is way cooler, in my opinion. I mean, no offense. I mean, I'm sure the game would be fun if it was just these little dudes running around and shooting at each other, and I think that would still be a fun game. But this is what is going to sell the game for me anyway. Like, having a big robot that can go ahead and blow things up, and having the dynamic battlefield that you play on with, like, the giant fuel cans. I love that. There's rules for actually, like, when you take the fuel can, like when your robot throws at another robot, there's rules for that robot to catch it and heave it back, which is awesome. And when that happens, it's like scenes like that, you know, occur in your mind, and like you can kind of picture the way that would look, if you will. And that's one of the things I wanted to mostly stress about this game, is that yes, I've kind of been down this road before with other, because of the sheer number of different games that I played. I played lots of miniatures games, I played lots of war games, and I've definitely played lots of sports themed games as well. And so this is kind of an amalgamation of all that put together. However, the immersion that I have is very evident. I felt like, especially with the whole premise of the different pilot, it kind of brought me back a little bit, you know, towards those old BattleTech days, towards those old MechWarrior days, where, you know, the pilot was like this very, very important piece of the equation here. Without that pilot, you know, and you know, to guide your robot to and fro, you are going to not have anything. And obviously there's rules for, like, having somebody else step in and just take that particular thing over, and that sucks more than anything, I'll tell you right now. And that is, I mean, it's great when you do it. I mean, I cheered when I pulled it off. But, you know, when you lose, you know, your robot, if you will, and somebody else is all of a sudden directing it, and it's dragging their plasma ball down to, like, score a dunk on you. That is very disheartening, and but that all is part of the whole experience of the game and the fun of the game. And I really, really like the story that the game tells me as I play, and the fact that it just seemed to always come down to, like, everybody had a chance to win. Like, when we were playing, you know, the one with the plasma balls, when we were playing that version, you know, that match, if you will, you know, not to say that having a death match where everybody's robots just beats the tar of each other isn't fun, but it just seemed like it always came down to, as these robots were racing with the plasma ball, and because there's rules for being able to steal the plasma ball from somebody else, or all those things. You can throw the plasma ball at people and bounce it off a robot, do damage to a robot and bounce it back to you, you know, so you can do damage to people. I mean, so there's, like, all kinds of cool things and cool moves that you can do. But it seemed to me like towards the end, everybody, because of the 10 points that you get for a goal, everybody had a chance, you know, to get that, to accomplish that, if you will. And it comes down to, like, a cool, awesome moment of a good tactics card that you had in your hand, maybe a lucky die roll, and a combination of being just all of that and being in the right place at the right time. And it has the story that the match tells you is a fantastic one, that you're going to remember and one you can enjoy. And I guess ultimately that's what I'm looking for in a game. I want it to have, in games like this, I want it to have spectacular moments of like either great luck or great bad luck, if you will. And also just a very, very good telling of the story to get from the beginning of the game till you find out who wins. And if you get that, then you know, yes, you like winning, but win or lose, you still had a pretty good time. So, there you go. That is the Iron League. There's one last thing, and I apologize, I forgot to mention this. You do, depending upon the scenario, you have these guys, these mercenaries, and these two don't have miniatures yet. Remember, I have a prototype. But mercenaries actually go into the center of the board, and remember those coins that you can earn. As you like do better and better, you get these scrap chits or whatever. You can use those not only to bribe the referee, but you can use those to bribe mercenaries for that added edge in the situation when you don't have enough allocation points or whatever to get the people that you want. So that's like another thing, and I apologize for not mentioning that, but once again, you can read all about that in the rules as well. So anyway, there you go. That is that is Iron League. If you have any questions about the game, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, I'm the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. All right, bye-bye.